Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. Always a pleasure to bring in one of our good friends here. Rob Leatham joins us from Springfield Armory, obviously world champion about 47,000 times. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great today. How are you, Tom?
Well, I am good. It's like, I know you're thinking, you again? Boy.
No, you kidding? I get so excited every time I'm going to come on this thing. I'm going to get on it every day if you'd let me. I'd just sit in the background and I'd be the guy, the woman that sits in the background of Stern. I don't remember what it was. But, man, I would just sit down back there and just whatever came out of my mouth, you know? I could talk this all day long. I
figure you could be the Ed McMahon, you know? You could just sit over there and make comments.
Well, now that's an honor now, right there. The Ed McMahon, you're Johnny. Oh, you kidding? You bet.
So, okay, I got to tell the story. I'm talking to Rob earlier. We're texting back and forth. And I said, you know, one of the things we got to talk about is how do you know if you're a good shooter? And the next text that comes is a picture. He must have spun around, took a picture of his wall with like all these world championship trophies. I go, well, that's one way to know if you're a good shooter, I guess.
Yeah, I had to throw that smart ass out. I'll bring it there a bit. But no, it's a legit question. You know, how do you know? I mean, there are a lot of people I know that think they're good shots and aren't, and I think there are a lot of people out there that aren't good that think they are. You know, so it's kind of
Well, okay. So, I mean, for the average person, I mean, the first thing I come up with is, how do you know if you're a good shot? Well, go compete and find out.
Well, yeah, there's a solid way to find out, and what everybody finds out the first thing they go is first off, they don't know what they're getting into.
Right.
And next time you go is like, well, I got a lot of work to do, but almost everybody that goes out and tries it isn't what they think it's going to be, and they come back motivated to get better. And I think it's more important than actually.
You know, most of us
get better,
and most of us go to the range and we shoot up to whatever we're trying to do. Today, assuming we're not a competitive shooter, we go out there and shoot. Yeah, I hit the target. I put most of them in the black, and I guess I'm pretty good. But there's no comparison with anything else. There's no pressure test. There's no way to know, is this good versus what? If you don't have a versus what, there's really nothing to compare it with.
You're right there. That's exactly what is going to be the standard for it. I guess, you can look at you're going to go shooting, and you go have a good time.
Okay, tell you what we're going to do, Rob. We're going to take a quick break here. Talking to a gun store owner 2 days ago, and it's funny. He was saying, of all the guns, he said, I can't keep a 1911 in stock. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. I mean, what is it about the 1911? It's pretty crazy what's going on. And there are more and more guns available now. In fact, I just saw a report. Where was this? Sturm Ruger reports 54% sales surge as gun buying frenzy continues. Ruger, the second largest U.S. gun maker, said that it had continued to sell guns at a robust rate. Sales jumped 54% to $20 million in the second quarter. Incredible. And that's going on everywhere. I mean, every gun maker is doing the same thing, just cranking them out as fast as they can, doing the whole deal there. So, all right, we got Rob back here. Rob, I was just saying, I was at a gun store. I'm talking with Rob Leatham, obviously Springfield Armory, world champion shooter many times over. But I'm in this gun store. I'm talking to this guy about a 1911. He just says, I can't keep a 1911 in stock. He said, we'll get them in. They're gone in 24 hours. He said, if I had 100 of them, I could move 100 1911s. And this is a little bitty shop in a little bitty town. What's going on?
Amazing that 100-plus years later,
it is
what we would call a traditional classic platform. Guess what? They're still selling like hotcakes.
Well, and obviously Springfield Armory is one of the leaders in making and selling 1911s. And then I guess it was just last week or a week or so ago, you come out with yet another one. What is the Emissary?
Well, the Emissary is, if you back it up, I've been shooting squared trigger guards on 1911s for 30-plus years because I really like the way they feel. On the other hand, a lot of people don't like the way it looks. But finally, after 3 decades, I got them to build a squared trigger guard gun. And what it was going to start out as was just putting a squared trigger guard on it, but then they kind of revamped the whole thing. They went to a different checkering pattern, different grips. It's got a real coarse pattern that's almost like a fragmentation grenade, that real squared look.
Oh, yeah. Pineapple grenade, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, pineapple grenade. And what it does is it's very, with having big flats on it, it doesn't have the snagging that you would normally get from like real sharp 30 or 40 line checkering or even 20. So it actually doesn't grab onto stuff, but it has deep, deep grooves, which allows your flesh and your hands to go into it, so it grips really, really well. And some of the stuff, it's funny because it's things we've had in competition for quite some time, like bull barrels. We did away with the bushing. It has a flush to the slide bull barrel with a cool-looking chamfer, so the bigger barrel makes the gun kick less when you shoot it. To look at it, the traditional 1911 guy is going to go like, wow. But the modern shooter, that, especially the competition shooters that like flat tops and serrations and things like that, it's just, I would have to say, it's just the most modern 1911 you can get.
Why do you like a square trigger guard? What's that do for you?
Well, in the beginning, it gave you a nice flat surface for a two-handed grip to put your support hand trigger finger on, and I never did that. Some people did. But what I liked is it extended that portion. When I put my big fat hands one over the other on a two-handed grip, underneath the trigger guard, my support hand finger would go so far forward it'd be rolling over that curved portion of a 1911 trigger guard. So by straightening that out and extending it, it let my support hand finger push harder against the bottom of the frame on the trigger guard and give me a firmer grip. So I just always felt like it improved the way I grip the gun.
And this is, when you pick it up, one of the first things that happens is you go, wow, this is a heavy gun. I mean, it's forged steel. This is like, this is a real gun you can go out and shoot a gazillion rounds through.
Oh, yeah. I got to be honest, man, we've got the fitting of these things down now, and we can produce in quantity slide-to-frame fits that'll last for tens of, maybe 100,000 rounds. I don't know. I don't have one with that many on it. But you shoot 10,000 rounds from one of these things and wipe it off, and it looks brand new again. It feels brand new. Barrel fits are so good that this would have been a custom gun probably 15 years ago, and now it's production, and everybody can get one.
All right, so, and people know you as, a 1911 guy, pistol competition guy. I know you as just a gun guy. I mean, it's shotguns, revolvers, rifles. When you go into a gun store these days, what's Rob Leatham kind of cruising around looking for, whether it's new or used, or what catches your eye?
I immediately go to the used guns, old guns and used guns. It's funny you say that because I just did that the other day. And you know what? You're always looking for the bargain. That somebody's going to have a pre-Magnum Smith & Wesson 357 registered Magnum sitting there, and they don't know what it is, and you're going to buy one for $300. That doesn't happen, of course. But, man, the lure of just walking up and looking for that. So I look at anything old. And, the sadness is when I was a kid and walked in the gun store, that stuff was the stuff I'm looking for now is the stuff sitting there all the time. And now I'd love to walk in and find a whole line of old Lugers that people just want to get rid of.
It occurs to me that one of the things people may not know, and I think they're probably surprised at sometimes, is when you and I get together, inevitably, we end up talking about revolvers as much as anything else. You really like revolvers.
Oh, I love revolvers. I grew up with revolvers. We were a revolver family. The only not revolver we had was I think my Uncle Daniel brought back from war a Nambu. And we had a Nambu, and I still have it, although I did never shoot the thing. I don't even know if we have any ammo for it. But it was always revolvers when I grew up. And I really didn't get into the autoloaders until I got into the competition. When I got into competition, of course, I had to have them because they were so much better. But that doesn't change that I have a deep-seated traditional love for older things. And the older I get, the more I like older things, like old lever-action rifles more than I like new ones. And, you're always looking for that kind of stuff. I still think that if the average guy would learn how to shoot a double-action revolver and learn how to manipulate the trigger for that long stroke and the long pull and the long, what we call reset now, I think that would make them a better shot. You have to hold the gun so much better to pull the trigger through that. The new guns, we got sloppy, to be honest with you. The guns are so easy to shoot now that you give a guy that grew up on 1911s with 3-pound triggers a double-action revolver, you can't make it fire. And I think that's something that made me better, quicker, is that I was so used to shooting those hard guns. When I got my first 1911 in 45 and had a local guy do a trigger job on it, it was insanely easy to shoot for me. So I think part of that is just from that loving the old revolvers.
Sure. All right. So if, you had to just coach somebody, you're not even looking at them and say, all right, here's 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you want, things you could do, ways to make yourself a better shooter. Let's just stick with handguns right now. Just generally speaking, you've taught thousands of people to shoot. You watch tens of thousands of people shoot. If you say, okay, here's 3 things or whatever it is, you say, I could probably tell you without ever seeing you shoot that would help you. What would it be?
Well, it's pretty simple because the same mistakes get done all the time. People are trying to do things that they can't do because they understand incorrectly what it is they're trying to do. The hardest thing to do well is hold the gun steady and pull the trigger. That's the hardest thing. The easy thing to do is line up the sights. As long as you can hold the gun steady. And as long as you can hold the gun steady, aiming's easy. A lot of people have let's use the term flinch because it's commonly understood, but they have a tendency to try to control the recoil at the same instant that they fire the gun. So you have to separate those 2 things. So if I can teach you how to hold the gun firmly so that the gun won't kick too much or flip too much, that's the hardest part. After that, it's pull the trigger with no regards to what happens afterwards, meaning let the gun kick. The average guy is trying to keep the gun from moving. He's trying to keep it from flipping. He's focusing on the wrong parts of the trigger. So if I give it to you in 4 things, first thing, hold the gun better, right? Motionless, become steady and consistent. Don't change your grip pressure. If I can get you to do that, then I can teach you to pull the trigger real easily. I can teach you to aim, and then I can teach you to recover. So the hardest part's holding the gun. It really is.
It's really interesting that nowhere in there did you say, I'm going to teach you how to line up the sights. And you're right. That's what everybody wants to concentrate on. Do I have the sights lined up? And, it's that old deal of, and I know you've done the drill where you say, look, you aim the pistol. You just aim it, and I'll pull the trigger for you. And their groups shrink by 2/3 of what they were getting before because you're doing the thing that's important. You're pulling the trigger. Aiming the sights, line up the sights is easy.
It is. As a matter of fact, I only have to tell a person what alignment is, usually one time. I'll say, listen, you see this thing in the front? Put the top of this even with the top of that. Make the light bars on both sides of this thing equal, and then put that in the middle of the target. And I never have to tell them to do it again. But as soon as they grab the gun or draw the gun, start trying to grip it, they can't get it pointed where they want. So the last thing they think about is even looking at the sights, and then they stop trying to pull the trigger. They stop trying to grip, so they have a bad grip. They have their finger in the trigger on the wrong spot, and then they focus and they stop that, and then they focus completely on the sights. At which point they go like, I can't even hold the gun steady, so how am I supposed to pull the trigger? And the answer is you can't. It won't work. You don't have to tell people too much about aiming until it becomes a refinement level. Does that make sense, Tom?
Sure.
Until you get to it being refinement level. When it's just basic, meaning 10 yards and in, and you're hitting the middle of a silhouette-sized target, aiming's just not that. It's not that important. I mean, it has to be done. You have to create alignment. But, man, your focus has to be on the things that make the mistake. And you described perfectly how I show people that that's the case. And you pull the trigger for them, then they go, okay, which part did I take out of this whole component for you? This is, well, I pulled the trigger, or you pulled the trigger for me. And now you're shooting a group better than I can shoot, which means you hold the gun and aim the gun expert level. But how come you can't pull the trigger? Because our minds bounce back and forth. And while trying to pull the trigger, we stop pulling the trigger and then look at the sights.
Well,
we just see it all the time.
What you're saying is if you're really smart, you think about this stuff a lot, you probably can't be a good shooter. So what does that say about the good shooters like you?
we're not very smart. I'll put it up there right. I'm a shooter, Tom. If I could have been a rocket scientist, I would have been one, but maybe not. But I was left with nothing but incredible talent and the drive to become great.
Right. Okay. I'll give you that one. Okay. Here's a drill for people to try. If you really want to find out what this is about, take a little bit of tape over your rear sight.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And now all you're thinking about is trigger. Don't worry about that. Get it lined up and just work on trigger. Don't even worry about the sights. It's amazing what happens. You say, well, I can't see my sights. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay. Just
don't worry about it. Take that conscious thought that you are using to try to create some sort of picture you can't even do anyway, because it's never perfect. The average shooter doesn't know we never shoot a perfect shot. They're just close. Mm-hmm. And you tell them, listen, close your eyes. Hold the gun, get it lined up, put your finger on the trigger. You're all ready to go. Point it in the middle. Now close your eyes and pull the trigger. Tom, at 5 yards, I've never seen anybody miss.
Amazing.
With their eyes closed. And I said, and I'll say to it time and time again, so why are you worrying so much about looking at the sights? Let's do something else. Let's focus on doing something you don't do well instead of focusing on the thing you're good at.
I mean, and then there it is. And there are a lot of these different drills. Obviously, you can go get some instruction, but a lot of that you could do by yourself just by saying, hey, it's the trigger pull. It's get a good firm grip that's consistent and then work on the trigger and don't worry about the recoil. And I don't know.
Let the gun kick. I mean, I hear people constantly say, well, that's amazing that you don't seem to have any muzzle flips. Says, well, that's because I have a really well-timed flinch. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's worth working on. It just comes. But in the meantime, I can pull the trigger without moving.
There it is. Hey, Rob, thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's always fun. We'll do it again, and we'll have a little more time next time, perhaps.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It's phones. It's the world we live in today. Rob Leatham, world champion shooter, gazillion times over. Springfield Armory, the new emissary, that is. 45 1911 from Springfield Armory. It's pretty amazing. It is feels good. Looks good. Well, Rob designed most of it and said, hey, why don't you do this? Make a gun that I like. I said, well, if Rob likes it, it's probably pretty darn good.